The siege of Tournai should have been an easy victory for the English. They had every advantage. The larger army, numerous allies, as well as the element of surprise, where Tournai had very little time to prepare or build food stores for the siege. So what exactly went wrong? On the 23rd of July, 1340, King Edward III and his allies laid siege to the French-held city of Tournai, located in modern-day Belgium. This siege would have been the second battle of Edward's campaign into northern France after his oppressive victory at the Sluys estuary, which served to cripple the French navy and temporarily establish English dominance over the English Channel. When he arrived at Tournai, he and his allies surrounded the city and constructed siege engines. These siege engines included cannons, marking this siege as one of the earliest uses of cannons in European siege warfare. Unfortunately for Edward, these siege engines were largely ineffective against Tournai's walls, which were made with the best technology available at the time. Medieval cities were notoriously difficult to take control of. Sieges often lasted weeks or months. The main issues that cities under siege would face wasn't only from the attacking army, but the logistical problems they would cause. Starvation would kill more people than a blade ever would. This would force the cities to make deals or truces, which is how most sieges ended, instead of a dramatic overturning of leadership. After the siege engines failed, that was precisely Edward's plan: simply starve out the city until they either made a deal or nobody cared enough to defend it anymore. Starvation tactics take time, of course. Not only do you have to wait for people to starve, but we also have to wait for them to run out of food in the first place. Thus, the siege dragged on through the summer and into autumn. As previously mentioned, Edward had almost every advantage. He had the larger army, and more importantly, the city of Tournai didn't have an advance notice to build up its reserves of food before the siege. This all should have worked. But Edward fell into the same problems he did for most of his reign. He simply ran out of money. Edward was almost always in debt, and oftentimes this debt would exceed the annual revenue of the entire kingdom. Everyone knew this, including his army. He began to face dissent and hostility from not only his own troops, but also his allies, who were angry that they did not receive immediate pay and didn't believe they'd be paid at all. Not to mention, several of his allies had attempted to assault the city and suffered heavy losses for it. At the order of the Pope, Edward's mother visited Edward in his tent and pleaded for peace. She had done the same in front of her brother, King Philip IV of France. Edward had to agree. The English and French would reach a truce. This truce would mark the official failure of Edward's campaign into northern France. It carried several terms, but most notably, it would bar England from attacking France for 9 months, and Edward had to return to England with the remainder of his army. The one benefit of this truce for England was that Flanders would remain semi-independent, which made them closer allies for England and brought them closer into the sphere of English influence. Edward blamed his lack of funds during the siege on his ministers, not sending him money on time. When he returned to England that November, he fired many royal officials, which would leave the English government crippled for the first 4 months of 1341.